Hello, boys and girls of Credit Union Land, and welcome to episode 28 of the CUInsight Experience. My name is Randy Smith. I am one of the co-founders and the publisher of CUInsight.com, and it is my job on the show to have conversations with the best and the brightest of the credit union community. I get to pick their brains and see if we can't find a few nuggets that we can all learn from. My guest on today's show is Mr. Adrian Johnson. Adrian is the Senior Vice President and Chief Financial Officer at MECU of Baltimore. He's also the Board Chair of the African American Credit Union Coalition. Adrian's been at MSCU for over 2 decades, and since 2010, he has overseen the company's financial affairs. I will tell you, I hadn't had the opportunity in the past to have many conversations with Adrian. I was really looking forward to this today because I've been a big fan of the work that MECU is doing in Baltimore. I've always watched from afar, so I was looking forward to today quite a bit. Adrian and I talked about a lot. We talked about the work and the mission and purpose of the credit union in their community. We talked about giving back and how over his career that's become more and more important part of his legacy. There were so many just nuggets in the leadership and life hacks section. Adrian's been in leadership and at that senior level for quite some time. This was a really fun conversation to have. We're a couple of sports fans, so there's even some of that in there as well. Without further ado, let's just get right to the conversation with Mr. Adrian Johnson. Enjoy. Adrian, welcome to the show. I've really been looking forward to this conversation after doing some research on you. I don't think we've really had a chance to meet in person before, so I was really looking forward to this.
I'm looking forward to it as well, Randy. Thank you so much. I'm very humbled and grateful for the opportunity.
Oh, well, thank you. The feeling is mutual there. I'm glad we could take the time. I'd like to just jump right into the questions. And it's something that since starting CUInsight a decade ago, following MECU and all the work that you guys have done, and I've been really impressed with the work that you guys do in the community and how involved you are in the communities that you serve. Is this something, I guess I would ask, is this a cultural thing that runs through the entire organization, and why is it so important for everybody over there?
Well, it is a cultural thing, and so just to kind of give you a little background, I've been with MECU, it's Municipal Employees Credit Union Baltimore, but I've been with MECU almost 22 years. So in July, it'll be 22 years. And since the day I arrived, MECU has always had this culture of caring and culture of giving. And so that culture permeates from the board down to the staff. And so, we roll up our sleeves, being part of the Baltimore's community. We consider ourselves Baltimore's credit union. It's been that way since I've been there, and it's basically who we are. So it's in our DNA.
It's in the DNA. There's a lot of talk. I just recently got back from a conference, and it seems like over the past year or so, a big conversation around credit unions is the war for talent. When it comes to the credit union, how do you guys find people that fit that culture, when they're first coming in? So we're looking at a tight labor market now, and certainly employees have opportunities to go other places, and employers can be very selective in their choices. But, we want to look for people that are service oriented and that want to make a difference. And so, the credit union difference, if you think about it, it's all about people helping people. And so, we want to attract folks that want to make a difference, that are service oriented, and that want to change our members' lives financially. And so that's very important. Is there anything specifically that you can think of that you do at the credit union to not only recruit, but I guess find those people? Is it through different community organizations, or is it really traditional job boards and things like that?
Yeah, so there's a couple of things. I mean, we have an employee referral program. Okay. So we want our employees to go out and talk to their friends and family about their experience at MECU. And certainly if it's a positive one, that attracts people. If we're out in the community and we're doing things and it connects with somebody out in the community, that connects with people coming in. Then through our interviewing process, we kind of do a behavioral interviewing process. So we put a candidate in various situations and see how they respond. And so a lot of it, again, it's about people helping people. It's about service to our community. And so if people feel service oriented, not to mention, we do have a decent compensation package. We do promote, if somebody needs a tuition advance for school, we do have a program. And so we think we're pressing the right buttons, if you will, with the right items, if you will, that will attract or at least bring people to us. And then, part of the search is if you go out to our website, the MECU website, we talk about the community and some of the things we do out there as well. And so people can kind of get a feel for what they're getting into.
So they know what they're getting into when they come there. I think it's awesome. It's one of those kind of scratch my own itch questions where I'm like, you guys have, it seems like, an amazing culture in the community. So how do you attract more like that? But it sounds like even the work in the community helps you attract the like-minded people, right? So
people, you think about it. What's your purpose now? And so if you live a purpose-driven life, that becomes very important. And taking care of others is very important. And so that's the type of people that we want to attract. One piece of the pie that we tackle coming in the door.
When I was doing the homework for our conversation, scouring the interwebs, I noticed you personally that it seems like you have a soft spot for charitable organizations in the community and, working with nonprofits. Is that something that had always been a part of your life growing up, or was it something that maybe came as you had more success? You mentioned being there for 20 years, were the giving back, or a combination of both, I guess.
It's a combination of both. And so my, it's part of my DNA. Growing up, I looked at my mom and I looked at my grandmother, and they were always helping people. There was always helping somebody. And so it didn't matter if it was a family member, it didn't matter if it was friends, it didn't matter who it was. And I was part of the Greater Baltimore Committee, the leadership class. And what that tries to do, it exposes you to a lot of different things, whether it be politics, whether it be corporations, whether it be nonprofits, the nonprofit community. And so it gives you a sense of how the city is really put together and who pushes the buttons and all that kind of good stuff. But at the end of the day, they do want you to get involved with nonprofit organizations. There's a thread through most of them. It has to do with education. It has to do with financial literacy. And then I have a couple of them that are one-offs, one which that I'm still involved with now has to do with child abuse, Family Tree.
Okay. Family Tree. All right. We'll have to link to all of those. That's for sure. So just to kind of circle back there, there was a program you said in 2007 that you joined that was through, was it through the city of Baltimore, or that kind of gave you? Yeah, the Greater Baltimore Committee. So it's GBC. And that's an organization that has really all the connections, if you will, throughout the city, whether it be public or private. And then they kind of set the tone. They kind of help the city set the tone in the direction and make recommendations as to where they think the city should be headed. And so, again, it's public and private. So it's just not, one sector. And so being part of that and kind of understanding, up until 13 years ago, I lived directly. I never lived outside of Baltimore City. And so for me, understanding how the dots were connected, for instance, why is the football stadium in downtown Baltimore? Why is the baseball stadium in downtown Baltimore? Why is there an Inner Harbor in downtown Baltimore? Some of these things that, from a person that lived in West Baltimore or lived in Northeast Baltimore, why are some of these things being moved out of the communities and into, downtown Baltimore, for instance? Of course, didn't understand all of that. Now kind of understand the dynamics. And so, we moved away from manufacturing town into being a service or a tourist town. And so those dynamics change. It changes the city. And so what becomes the economic engine is certainly different than what it used to be. Understand. That's pretty cool. I mean, it sounds like a great program to educate, like you said, the powers that be and how it all works, right? Like it's like a fraternity. And so it's like a sorority and fraternity all together because it's the who's who of Baltimore. Yeah. And it really doesn't. So I always talk about the power of the network. And so,
We always talk about what you know is who you know. And so you pick up the phone and call somebody, you want them to be able to know who you are and to respond. It's a group that really cares about the city and the success of the city.
That is awesome. I think I will tell you, as we move forward into the second part of the conversation, circling back to that network, I know there's a few things I'm going to want to ask you about on that. One thing, like currently, that I would like to ask you as we kind of move the conversation a little bit into, the African American Credit Union Coalition, is there something, before we go there though, is there something that you see in credit unions, as far as like the relevance of credit unions going forward, that we like kind of that disruptor, I guess would be the way of putting it, that you're seeing happening that you think credit unions better, I guess maybe move on, if that's the right way to put it, or that something that's maybe a threat that if we don't get behind it, it could hurt us. There's a lot of different fintechs and things, so.
Yeah, I know it seems like we've always been attacked by banks. And so, I think that we're always on the defense. And so we could change our posture and maybe be on the offense more often. And then if the credit unions could come together and have a unified message on certain issues, and not have to be, rallied, if you will, just kind of being unified in a way that proactive versus being reactive. And a lot of times we find ourselves being reactive. You can talk about a number of issues, whether it's be regulatory or political, but it just seems like if in that advocacy space, if we could be a little more aggressive and be more proactive, and then just be unified, have a unified front, and whether it be marketing commercials, national commercials, whatever the issue is, I think that would bode well for us.
So let me ask you, you're serving as the board chair of the African American Credit Union Coalition currently. I am a huge fan of that organization. So if you could, for our listeners, could you give us a little, the quick mission statement, the background? Okay. So, and I'm glad to hear that you're a great fan of the organization. And of course, I've been a member since 2002. And when I became a member, for me, it was about the network. It was about the family feel. It just felt right. But, here we are. We're talking about, and, I was in awe, of course, looking at these CEOs of these African women and men that were CEOs of credit unions across the country, and the influence that they had, and just the way they talked and the way they carried themselves. And so, I got involved with the internship program. And so bringing young folks or college students into the credit union space and exposing them holistically, not just looking at having a job, but also talking about financial literacy, getting involved, like volunteering and all that kind of good stuff. And so getting a chance to talk to CEOs across the country on a conference call, getting exposed to senior management, those types of things. And so that's what I was kind of rallied around. But, this diversity and inclusion issue is very, very important. And so, part of our mission, we want to increase that diversity within this credit union space through, advocacy, of course, and through professional development. And so we believe, that, from this standpoint, especially as it relates to African Americans, we are the leading influence as far as mentoring, educating, providing a network of opportunities to increase that diversity. There's about 165, 170 presidents and CEOs that are African American across the country. There's close to, I guess, between 5,000 and 6,000 credit unions. We think we can do better. And so I always think about the talent. We have young folks that are part of our organization. They are the future. But I think about the talent that we have now, college-educated individuals, innovative individuals, knowledgeable individuals that could certainly step into exec roles now or be considered or be CEOs now, that it really just takes that opportunity. And so we are advocates for that. And so, as the industry, that certainly we want to be at the table representing the AACUC and its members.
And that's my role.
Well, I love that. I know at your conference that comes up in August, you guys recently had announced that Maurice Smith, who was a previous guest on the show, is winning the Lifetime Achievement Award. Like the conversation with Maurice, I could have had for hours. It was, it was just, I think I kind of sat there in awe of just his experience and his knowledge. And, that was something that, he mentioned, whether it was, adding a cooperative principle but just giving more people a seat at the table, right? Like, so,
Exactly.
I absolutely love it. I have I will tell you, one of my favorite, if you want to say like credit union experience stories, happened at one of your conferences in Charleston, South Carolina. I lived in Greenville at the time and was invited down to speak. And I'm sitting there having coffee in the morning, and Jesse Jackson is there also having coffee. And we're like, we're both in workout clothes, just sitting there talking. He ends up being the keynote, who I think spoke like right after I did. And I was like, this is this is wild to me, right? Like, when it was at that event, and I'll never forget it, the year after, you guys were holding it in Detroit, and that's where I'm originally from. And I told everybody then, if you invite me back the next year, you'll make my mother really happy. And you guys did. So it was awesome. So I've been a few times, so I'm like I said, huge fan of the work.
Great.
If people want to get more involved, obviously we'll link to the website. We'll link to the conference that's coming up in August. Is there anything else that you would suggest if people want to get more involved with the organization?
Well, certainly you can reach out to me, and I can give you my email address. You can reach out to our executive director, Renee Satterwhite, and all that information is on the website. We do have a Eastern Regional chapter, and so Maurice Dawkins is the current president of that organization. We just, I guess earlier this year, there's a Southern Regional chapter now, and the president there is Priscilla Awkward. And so I know through the website, that's a great vehicle to kind of link up to those folks. But certainly I can give you my contact information, and that could be the start.
that we will link to all of that in the show notes for sure. Like I said, I'm a huge fan, so I think everybody should get out there and check it out. And I love what you guys stand for. And one of the things that impressed me so much at the events that I've been to of yours is like the dialogue and the conversation. Like it was like really kind of back to the people helping people. And it was,
right.
I mean, I remember another time, and there was an NCUA regulator there, and I don't remember who it was, but somebody just stood up and was like, if you could just get out of our way sometimes so we could help our communities. And I was just like, this. So it was fantastic. I'd like to switch gears a little bit here and kind of move on to the leadership and life hacks portion of the show.
Okay.
To me, this is, is to share your knowledge and, your kind of path in credit unions to hopefully help out, other young leaders, much like what you guys do, every day. So first question, what inspired you to take the gig, 20 years ago at the credit union?
Hey, it's funny. I've been in this space in August will be 41 years. So I literally started, and I didn't know it was a career, but I started this journey. I was a 17-year-old graduating out of high school, and I did not know what I wanted to do. And so my first job was with a bank, and so I'll always be a recovering banker.
A recovering banker.
But certainly, I was in my last year next to my last year of grad school. And I went to management and said, I graduate next May. What are you going to do with me? And they didn't have an answer for me. And so that kind of made me feel like I knew when I graduated, I didn't know where I was going to be, but I knew where I wasn't going to be. And so I knew I was leaving that bank. And so it just so happened, sometimes things just line up the way they're supposed to line up. And so when I graduated out of grad school, there was an opportunity down at the credit union. And that's what it's all about. We have to, in this space, you have to have a degree to get certain positions. You do have to have certain experience. And so for me, my niche, they needed my niche, but it was all really about the opportunity. And so I was in my mid to late 30s, and I was energized because I just graduated from grad school, and I was really, really ready to change the world, and make a difference. And so the credit union space is about making a difference. It's about people helping people. But predominantly is that retail model, if you will, and that's geared towards the consumer. Even where I sit today, it's all about doing the best I can for the member.
Yeah. How has the inspiration changed with time on the job?
It's funny. It really hasn't changed. I'm in the fourth quarter of my career and probably the fourth quarter of my life. And so I guess I'm not as intense as I was 21 years ago. But certainly the inspiration, and that's why, I'm here in this position now, it's about getting others the opportunity to do what I do or to be in leadership, to set the direction or have a say in the direction of an organization. And I just believe that if I can do it, I always say, if I can do it, somebody else can do it.
I may know the answer to this next question, but you might not surprise me on this one. How would you describe your leadership style? You mentioned being a servant earlier, so
you got it. So I'm it's funny. Grad school at a Jesuit school, and I'm about servant leadership. And so again, that credit union philosophy is about people helping people. So I want to help people succeed. And so I want to help people that report to me succeed. I want to help our members succeed. I want to help people that I don't even know succeed, that I come in contact with. And so I always feel like, I've been very fortunate and to be in this space, but also have this opportunity. So, my job, and that's part of the Jesuit teaching, is about helping others. And so that's what I do.
You found your place. How would your team describe your leadership style?
I would say they would say I'm a team player. I would say that they think I'm very passionate about what I do. I would say that they feel that I'm approachable, that I'm fair and honest, and that I want to help them, give them the tools to be successful. I want to help them be successful. And so, I've been through this journey. I started at the bottom. My first job was actually a coin teller. And so you don't go from the bottom of the organization to the top of an organization without being able to get along with people. And so you have to be able to get along with people. You have to perform, right? You got to perform. But you have to also be willing to help others and help them succeed, give them the tools to be successful.
That's interesting to me. How would you say, or has your leadership style changed from like you just said, you started at the bottom of the credit union. So my guess is over your career, you had your probably first leadership opportunity. Now you're the, senior vice president and the CFO of the credit union. So, more responsibility there. But how has that leadership style changed since, you got your first crack at leadership? How about that?
Well, it's funny. My first job, of course, was the bank. And so by the time I got to the credit union, my first few months, I was kind of getting a lay of the land and understanding, who the folks were, whether it be the management that was there, getting to know the board and that kind of thing. But, that next year, I was a part of that leadership team. And so what I would say is, I think the younger I was, I wanted, you're young, again, you have that energy, but you want things to happen like today. But there's a process through this, right? And so some of the things that I came in with, you have to educate the board, right? And so educating the board, kind of informing them what we were doing, and then executing. And so I think I have more wisdom from my experience. I have wisdom, right? And so the way I communicate, the communications is a lot, and I think that I've become a better person, both personally and professionally, because of this journey.
That is awesome. Is there something, like, when you think back to your, I think it ties just well into what you were talking about, but back to that early leadership opportunity, is there a mistake that you made, or you mentor a lot of people when you're mentoring young leaders? Is there a mistake that you see them making over and over again?
And not that it's a mistake, but, you think about it. You want things to happen today. You think that, you come in the door, you think you can be president tomorrow, right? I can tell you, 21 years ago, I thought I could be CFO. I thought I was prepared to be CFO. My last job at the bank actually was the financial analyst for the CFO. And so I worked for him, and I saw, on a day-to-day basis, what needed to be done, how he operated, that type of thing. And I had a lot of experience around that. And so naturally, I think that, I should be the CFO. And so sometimes we're very impatient, and so we don't have the patience that we need to kind of just go through this journey a little slower and gain some, sometimes experience brings wisdom. And so when I look at it now and I look back at it, I have more wisdom than I had maybe 20 years ago, 21 years ago.
As a leader, is there something on your team that people have heard you say so many times they could finish your sentence?
It's funny. I was really thinking about that question and how I would respond. I would say too much whom is given, much is required. And then the other thing I would say is, be careful what you ask for, because you just might get it.
You might get it, right?
I asked for this. And so there's responsibilities sometimes that come along with that you feel like you didn't sign up for. But yeah, you did. That's what you signed up for. And so I always say, live simply, care deeply, speak kindly, give of your time and your treasure. And so my people hear me say one of those three things a lot.
A lot.
And so, through this journey, in one conversation or another, they'll hear me say one of those three things.
Speaking of your team, what's the greatest strength of your team?
One thing I really like about my current team, and believe me, we have some younger members. It's a good mix of good diversification of folks, because you have younger and older, more experienced, less experienced. But we have folks that are eager to learn. We have folks, the greatest thing that I really like about them, they work together. And so they work as a team and they help each other out. And so they cover one another. And then from my standpoint, because, I'm sitting up here hoping that these things are getting done. And a lot of times I don't know exactly how they're getting done, but I like the fact that I can trust them as well. And so I think that, I put the trust in the folks that report me, and I see the production that comes out of that. And what I do, I act as a coach, and so, I try to ask the right questions to make sure that things are getting done correctly or getting done on time. But also, I'm not this boss where, I'm with the iron fist, so to speak. And so, I give them some leeway, making sure that they're getting things done. But that all comes with trust. And so that trust factor is very important.
That is a key word, isn't it? That's for sure. Do you have, has there been a piece of advice that you received in your life that you find yourself going back to over and over again?
Well, I tell people that you have to perform. And so, we talked earlier about, we're this caring organization, culture of caring, we're out in the community, that type of thing. But you still got a job to do. Right? And so you have a responsibility. I tell people you got to perform, right? And so on a day-to-day basis, there's a requirement that you have to perform. The other thing I talk about is help each other. And so, and they do that. They help each other. I might be more knowledgeable about one matter than you are. And so that's very important. Volunteering. And so you never know who you're going to meet and the impact that they may have on your life. And so I have time and time again, just through volunteering, I've met somebody who has helped me at some point in my life, at some stage in my life.
That's so interesting. And it leads into a place that I wanted to go and actually circle back from earlier in our conversation as well. I like to ask people, like, when you run into a wall, like you're trying to get through something, problem at the office, do you have any like hacks for, young leaders or leaders in general, right? Like, on how you kind of take a look at it from the other side or get through it? You mentioned, the importance of network to you. So do you have a group of people that, like, maybe whether inside or outside the credit union, that if you're running into an issue, you're like, I know who I'm calling on this. They take a look at it a different way.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that. And so I think that the power of the network is very, very important. But there's been times, that something comes up and I'm not the expert on it, or I don't know. And so it is nice when you can pick up the phone, or you can send out an email, or you even send out a text and somebody responds. And that's one of the things I really like about this credit union space. And so, it's not like they were in banking is very competitive, and it's like, who's the smartest guy in the room, that type of thing. Here in this space, folks are willing to help you get through anything that you need to get through. And so, I'm smart enough to know that I don't know everything, but I'm smart enough to know also that I have resources and I know people. And so I can go to. There are times also when, you just have to kind of, I do my, when I'm well rested, or when my mind is clear on certain things, I'm smart enough to know too. Sometimes you got to walk away from something and then come back to it. I'm the type of guy, wake up in the middle of the night and bingo, I've got it. And so as a person, you have to know what your strengths are, and you have to know what your weaknesses are, and speak honestly with yourself. What do I need to do to kind of get through this?
I have to ask. So if it's middle of the night and it comes to you, are you like I've told my entire team, if they get the 4 a.m. email from me, that I don't expect them to answer. It's just I don't want to forget about it. So, do you write it down? Do you fire something off? Are you just up working at that point? What does that look like when that inspiration strikes and you've figured it out? So
I have a right next to my bed is I have a nightstand, but I have a book where I put notes in it, and so in that book I will either write something down, or I will send myself a text. And so I'm not sending it to one of my staff. I'm sending it to myself. And so when I get to work, I can pull it up and I can kind of go from there.
I love it. This one, you've talked a lot about your team, and you said your team, a diverse team, even in experience. How do you make sure that your message stays fresh to your team? And then one step further, how do you make sure that the credit union's message is staying fresh to the community and the members?
Right. So one of the things that we do, we have one-on-ones. So I have one-on-ones with my direct reports. And as I mentioned earlier, I'm approachable. So, if somebody calls me and says, I need to talk to you for a few minutes, I may not be able to talk to them right then and there, but we'll set up something on my calendar that they can come up and talk to me in a reasonably short period of time. Usually it's within 24 hours. And so we have one-on-ones. We'll have folks that, want to approach me. So, I do have an open door policy, if you want to say that. But we have meetings, we have regular meetings, and usually they happen at least once a month or a couple times within a quarter. And then also, it's just a matter of, whether it be email once in a while, and then a couple of my direct reports from time to time, I will send them a direct text about whatever it is. And so I really believe in giving folks the tools to be successful. And so communication is a very important piece of that. And so over the years, we talked earlier about, what do you do differently now that you didn't do before? And so sometimes tone makes a big difference, right? And so sometimes I have to, I might put an email or a text together, but it doesn't have the right tone. And so I don't send it out. I kind of go back and read it, and then I look at it and say, okay, this sounds, I'm going to get the right response from this message versus the prior message. And so experience and wisdom has brought me to that point.
I will say that I struggle with tone often, especially when I get excited about something. So it is something that I know I have to work on, and am reminded of it often actually at home. So
I'm on my second time, so I know how that feels.
I'm with you. So once we're doing this over Skype, and as soon as the video came up, I was looking forward to asking you this question. You have a lot of sports memorabilia behind you in your office. So you have a free day. Nothing's on the calendar. What passions outside of credit unions do you have? What do you do to recharge?
Yeah, so it's funny. I love sports. And so people who know me, I'm an avid football fan. I'm an avid baseball fan. I love basketball. And so this used to be that type of town. So we don't have basketball anymore. So you have to ride down to D.C. or ride over to Philadelphia. And so, I've been very fortunate to be able to go to different stadiums and kind of coordinate with trips to go go to different venues. And that's what I try to do there. So that's kind of with travel and all my big events, if you will. But on a day-to-day basis, if it's a nice day, I like being outside. Every year on my birthday, I like self-reflection. And so I try to think about, what's the plan for the next year? How are we going to make our way through it? I like spending time with my wife. And so, one of the things that happened earlier this year, we both took a course through Dave Ramsey, the Financial Peace University, and that's helped us a lot. We're talking about money, of course, but it's helped us a lot just within our communication. So, now I'm bouncing ideas off of her or bouncing things off of her because I always feel her soft skills are a little better than mine. And so I listen to, and so it's about listening, right? So sometimes it's just about, and so I'm in the fourth quarter of my life. I'm in the fourth quarter professionally and personally. Health is important. Helping people talk about growing their dollars is important to me. And so this whole thing about financial literacy is about changing people's lives, and so that they live better.
I have multiple questions from, I have a couple add-on questions from that. One, probably an easy one, but I'm just curious. What's the favorite stadium that you've been to?
Oh, boy. Favorite stadium. I would say at this point, probably football. Let's see, football, Dallas Cowboys Stadium. Baseball, the Oriole Park at Camden Yards. It can't get much better than that. That was the one that changed all the parks, right? Like they all had to catch up after that. Exactly. Yeah. So I love that park as well. I mean, I think that's probably to me, that's one of the best parks. Now, nostalgia. I'm a Wrigley fan. Yeah. Chicago Cubs, Wrigley Field. Boston, Fenway Park. And if you ever go to Fenway Park, make sure you take the tour. And then New York Yankees new stadium. That's, when I think about Cowboys football, I think about New York Yankees stadium as base for baseball. That's the baseball one, eh? Yeah. The other question I had from the free time was you mentioned I'm a huge, I journal. I like to reflect and kind of on things. And you mentioned on your birthday that you like to kind of reflect, but it also sounded like look forward. Is that something that you actually set aside time to do, and do you write it down, or is it just something that's that day that you're thinking of? No, actually, now it may not be on my, so I was born in the fall of the year, so it may not be that day specifically, but usually I take off on my birthday. Okay. And so if it's a good day, I usually try to be out somewhere, but a lot of times I like being by myself. And so that gives me an opportunity to kind of take mental note, either take some notes in my phone, or I'll have my journal with me. And just really to say, what is it that you plan on doing over the next year? What is it that you plan on doing or would you like to accomplish over the next year? And that's both professionally and personally. Do you ever go back on the notes from the year before, or is it you just kind of keep moving forward? It's it is a approach where it encompasses what happened in the past and what do you hope to happen in the future, and sometimes it's just a continuation. Yep. And so enhancing basically, because you don't get. Sometimes it's not all about you. Yep. And so it may be a family member, it may be a friend, and so it may you may have to set aside what's happening with you personally to help somebody else. And so the timeline is not met exactly the way you want it to be, but that's life, right? That's life. Absolutely. Life is about continuing to move forward. I want to be respectful of your time, so I'd like to get into the third part of the show. This is the rapid fire questions. The questions are rapid. Your answers do not have to be. So, do you remember the first time you got into memorable trouble? Or maybe that you're willing to tell us. No. Well, it's funny. The first time I really got in big trouble, I guess, was probably in school. I was in elementary school. And I was accused of doing something that I at the time I did, but I lied about it. and so I think I learned, for me, it's easier for me because all the trouble it caused. And so here I am, I'm this good student. So everybody was saying, no, he couldn't have done that. And I wasn't telling them that I did that. But what I learned from that is, just be honest. Yep. It's easy to just to fess up, and you'll get through it, and you'll be fine. And so I don't try to sugarcoat things or make up stuff. It is what it is a lot of times. And so, it's a lesson learned in ethics, right?
Right. I was going to say at a young age, that's a good thing.
Exactly.
Do you have any daily routines that if you don't do, your day just feels off? You and I, sounds like we both carry around a journal from time to time. It's the first thing I do every morning before I have my, with my coffee, is I write some stuff down. Is there anything that you do that every day?
Well, it's funny. So I live in southern Pennsylvania, and I work in downtown Baltimore. So it's 45 miles between here and work. And so I get I like listening to music, and music kind of gets me in the right frame of mind, if you will, to get me going. Usually the first thing I do, and you think about it, 20 years ago, you didn't have to worry about it, but I got to go through emails. And so I could probably get over 200 emails a day. And so while most people get their coffee and everything, I'm making sure I got my bottle of water, my snack bar. So I'm really set up to kind of go through these emails.
First thing.
But the emails kind of it gives me a frame of mind of letting me know on a lot of fronts what's happening. And so I have to kind of go through them.
The random question, you just mentioned music. What's the best album of all time? That one you can listen to front to back. Don't even skip a song.
It's funny. I'm a Motown guy, Motown through and through. But I can remember as a young adult, I guess teenager, young 20s, I had an opportunity to go see Michael Jackson and his Off the Wall album. And so that's the album that's kind of stuck with me through my life, I guess. And but that whole Motown, the music of Motown, I think of Michael Jackson, I think of Stevie Wonder.
Oh, the songs in the key of life. Like I said earlier, I grew up in Detroit, so Motown was always playing. I think
you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, and I think if I remember correctly, I think you're the second guest actually who said Michael Jackson in that album. So you're not alone on that one. Obviously, it's Michael Jackson, right? I'm a huge reader. We have a stack of books in our house, and most come from people that have referred or told us we should read stuff that we're trying to make our way through. Is there a book over time that you've either gifted or that you've recommended to others that they should read?
I got to tell you, recently, so I got baptized at the age of 57. So I'll be 59 this year, so going on 2 years ago. And I will tell you, if I was coming through again and I was in my 20s, or I will tell you, fast forwarded, young folks coming through and they're in their 20s, I always talk about them reading Proverbs. Them getting the English version of Proverbs tells you how you should live your life. But there's a couple other books that I tell people to read too. So one is The Tortoise and the Hare, and that's about the journey, and that's about patience, and that's progress over time. But because I'm in the finances and all that kind of stuff, Everyday Millionaire. But there's one more book, and it talks about investing for kids. It's a book that's called Growing Money, and it's an investing guide for kids. It's geared towards middle school kids. And so I'm at a stage in my life, if I had to do it all over again, it's about saving, and it's about investing. It's not all about having things today. It's about investing for the future. And so, I listen to people like Susie Orman and Dave Ramsey and Chris Hogan. And so I want to help people. It's not about what you make. It's about what you do, what you make. But it's the sacrifice also in there. But I think at the end of the day, folks can be a lot better off with their finances if they do some basic things. And so when I heard, we had this layer of the government shutdown, and all these folks that were talking about they didn't have money to get from paycheck to paycheck or month to month to pay their bills, that didn't make me feel too good.
Yep.
And so how do we help people be prepared for those types of situations? And, it's certainly got to help people where they are, but we can do better.
I think that ties right into the next question. As you've gotten older, what's become more important to you? You just mentioned sacrifice some, but like what's become more important to you over time? And on the flip side of that, has anything become less important to you as you've gotten older?
What I do feel is very important. We need people that are either college educated or folks that are willing, because, we're talking about continuous learning. And so whatever your profession is, whether you need certifications, whether you need the degree or whatever it is, life is about learning. And so you have to be, I talk about, so education is very important to me. The other piece that's very important to me is about changing lives through financial literacy. And so that's very important to me as well. And so I tell people save, save, save. And if you want to learn about investing, the stock market has outperformed any other investment over time. And so what is that about? A lot of people don't know what that's about, but it's not the hardest thing it's centered around risk, but we take risk every day. It can be taught. And if you don't feel like you have the time, you can set aside the funds and let somebody help you that you trust, rely on people that you trust to help you make that a reality. And it's not only going to help you, but help your family. People like being around people that are successful. And so they listen to people, but sometimes you got to show them firsthand what that success looks like.
So here's the question that I didn't send you, but you're talking about it right now. When you hear the word success, who's the first person that comes to mind?
Wow.
I don't send it on purpose.
So when I think about success, the first person I think about is my first CEO at the credit union. And this guy, his name is Bert Haas Jr. And so when I talk about success, I had an opportunity to watch him 2 times a month, the first Wednesday of the month and the third Wednesday of the month, and how he communicated and dealt with the board. And so he's my role model, as it relates to success. And he had a successful credit union career.
That is awesome. And I've met Bert a few times, and every time I see him, like at GAC, it's just a warm feeling every time I see him. So, it's what a great guy. That's awesome. Adrian, I thank you so much for being on the show. The last question that I have for you is, do you have any final asks of our listeners or any final thoughts you'd like to get out there today?
A couple things. I mean, I always believe that credit unions were invented to give them a voice and give them a voice. And so I certainly love being in this space. And then the last thing I would say is, certainly live simply, care deeply, speak kindly, and give of your time and your treasure. I think that's very important.
I think that is the absolute perfect way to end, and it kind of brings it all the way back full circle. We will link to everything we talked about today in the show notes. You mentioned your email earlier. Is that the best way for people to reach out to you if they have additional questions? Yeah, I mean,
you can send me an email at ajohnson0@yahoo.com. That's probably the best. I will definitely see that and will respond to that. That's probably the easiest. And then I will, depending on what the question is, I can kind of link you to the folks that can make things happen.
That could make it happen. Well, we'll link to that as well. So again, Adrian, thank you very much. I appreciate your time. I hope everybody enjoys this episode, and I wish everyone a great day. Thank you.